our life. Epiphany was when wise men, 3 kings, foreign dignitaries, and the Gentile world came to the Holy Land to find a closer relationship with Jesus Christ. Late in the 1960s, the epiphany of our generation, tourism started to take place from the United States to Israel. And the epiphany of our generation took place. And I want to tell you, one of our members, Rimon G, was God's guide. He was a Christian Arab born in Bethlehem. Since the 3rd century, the Church of the Holy Nativity in Bethlehem, which was built by Helene, the mother of Constantine, has been a constant place of worship for the birth of Jesus Christ in Bethlehem. And Rimon was born in Bethlehem. His background was the Crusades. In the 11th century, the Crusaders came from 5 great nations of Europe. They came to Israel, and there they married the most beautiful of Arab girls. And they created a family. And from the 11th century on, Bethlehem has been an Arab Christian haven in the Holy Land. And Rimon was God's guide for that land. Rimon went to South America. He got a doctorate education to become God's guide in the Holy Land. His heart did a flip-flop when he was 18, and he saw this beautiful 13-and-a-half-year-old girl, and he fell absolutely in love with her, and they had a chaperoned relationship for the next 4 years until he married her. His heart went out to his family, to his wife, to his children. But his time and his job went to the land of Israel because his job was to be a certified guide. He became God's guide in the Holy Land. God's guide in the Holy Land. That's what the text is talking about. It's talking about Epiphany being an explosion of foreigners coming in to learn about Jesus in the midst of the land where Jesus lived. And now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, get this, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who was born, King of the Jews? So much depends on the time of history where you've been born. In the late 1960s, after World War II, American capitalism had exploded to the world, and money was liberated in the world like never before in the history since the time of Noah. The development of the jet engine meant that in the 1960s, you could fly to Israel, spend a week there, come back, have a tour of the entire Holy Land, and only be gone 10 days. See, a lot depends on when you're born. There was an evangelical explosion, and people who believed in Jesus Christ wanted to learn more, they wanted to see more, they wanted to do more, and they went to Israel. There was an evangelical explosion that went forward, and in 1948, the state of Israel was named the State of Israel, and God's guides for Israel took place once again. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem, wise men came from the east, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? We have seen his star. Starting in the 1970s, tens of thousands of pilgrims started going to the Holy Land because they wanted to learn about Jesus Christ. Starting in the 1970s, tens of thousands of people went to the place of the birth of Jesus because they wanted to find where God had changed BC into AD. And Rimon was right there at the right time to be God's guide in the Holy Land. Wise men have always sought Christ. Wise men have always come to Israel saying, "Where is he who is born King of the Jews?" Wise men have always had their lives changed, their faith built, their knowledge enhanced, their religion, their history expanded because they went to the place where Jesus lived. And Rimon was God's guide in the Holy Land. Notice, we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. Now, verse 3 points out a little change. For when Herod the king had seen these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. I will point out to you a biblical truth. When Jerusalem is troubled, the rest of the world is troubled. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. When Jerusalem is peaceful, the rest of the world gets peaceful. But when Jerusalem is troubled, the rest of the world gets troubled. And we watched the Holy Land as there was an attack on Christ and his followers. We watched the Middle East and we saw the Palestinian ferment and rebel against him. Along came the Intifada against the Christians who wanted to go to Temple Mount. First they threw rocks, then they shot rockets, then there was a generation of suicide bombers that we saw. Then there were tunnels for the terrorists to ship weapons into Gaza. We watched it all develop. And Rimon was right there, God's guide in the Holy Land, taking people and showing them the places where Jesus had lived, had taught, had walked, and had died. And when he had heard, he gathered all the chief priests and all the people together, and he demanded of them where Christ should be born. Rimon went to South America and got a doctorate education that he shared with every tour group. He was best known as one of the highest guides in the state of Israel. He was one of the Holy Land's most known guides. He has pictures of himself showing President Bill Clinton the Holy Land. He has pictures of himself showing Hillary all the sites that were there. He has pictures of himself with Madeleine Albright when she was Secretary of State, and he was taking her around Israel. For those of you who aren't so political, he spent 3 weeks with Chuck Norris, showing him, the evangelical, all the things that Christ had done. He was in demand. John Hagin was one of the primary groups that consistently went with Rimon. You see, he was God's guide in the Holy Land, but because he did his work with excellence, because he did his work well, he was blessed and people knew him. Notice verse 5. And they said unto him, He has been born in Bethlehem of Judea, for there it was written, Bethlehem of Judah, thou art not least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come him that shall rule my people Israel. And Rimon was always true to his Arab tradition and always true to his Christian faith. A lot of the other guides would fool along with the girls on the tour. Rimon said, every girl that goes is like my daughter, and she deserves my respect. Every man that goes, every boy that goes is like my son and gets my education and gets my learning and gets my teaching. Every lecture that I give the wholeness of myself, because when people come to Israel, they deserve the best. See, he was God's guide. And so he was guiding for God. And notice how verse 7 says, Then Herod, when he had called the priests and the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared.